The top story from Ottawa. In the House of Commons, an apology from the Speaker to all members. Anthony Rota says he made a mistake when he invited a 98-year-old Ukrainian veteran to President Volodymyr Zelensky's parliamentary address on Friday. Now, that man, Yaroslav Hunka, served in a Nazi-aligned unit in the Second World War. Rota says he learned that information after recognizing Hunka, and he told the House this morning he now regrets the decision to do so.
I wish to apologize to the House, and I'm deeply sorry that I have offended many with my gesture and remarks. I would also like to add that this initiative was entirely my own. The individual in question being from my riding and having been brought to my attention. No one, including you, my fellow parliamentarians, or the Ukraine delegation, was privy to my remarks prior to their delivery.
Now, that statement was met with calls for Anthony Rota to resign as Speaker. Conservative MP Andrew Scheer told the House of Commons the incident also raises concerns about the security of Zelensky's visit.
The government of Canada has an obligation to him personally to secure his safety, has a responsibility to the people of Ukraine to ensure the safety of their president. And he has a responsibility to all Canadians to uphold the dignity of Canada as a country, as a trusted partner and ally. And in this case, it would have taken a simple Google search to find a blog post written by that individual saying that he served in an SS division, in a Nazi division during World War II. And again, all those resources are available to the government. The mandate, the responsibility lies with the government, and the entire reporting structure of the parliamentary precinct services here flows up to the government. That's why we still have many, many questions, and this issue does not end with your statement or your apology.
The government House Leader Karina Gould says the appearance by Yaroslav Hunka in the House of Commons was personally hurtful.
As a parliamentarian, as a Canadian of Jewish origin, as a descendant of Holocaust survivors whose majority of her family walked in to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and only my grandfather and his brother walked out, that I think this hurt all of us in Parliament. There are many times when we recognize people in the gallery, and we do so on your good advice and your good offices. And all of us here did that in the chamber on Friday because we trusted you.
That's Government House Leader Karina Gould speaking this morning. It's 12:13 now. 1:13 in the Mountain Time Zone, and we want to hear your thoughts on this situation in the House of Commons. Do you think House Speaker Anthony Rota should resign? What do you make of his apology? And what are the ramifications of this incident? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, you can reach us as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me now for more and to give us some context on this and take your calls is Ivan Kachinovsky. He's a political science professor at the University of Ottawa, and he specializes in major conflicts in Ukraine. He's published a paper on this division of the SS in Ukraine. Good afternoon, Professor. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation.
Well, many Canadians following the story are surely wondering how this could have happened in the first place. What was your initial reaction to what has unfolded over the weekend and what we're watching in Ottawa right now?
I think I could not have believed and could not have imagined that something like this could happen in the Canadian Parliament, because I researched this division. I researched its involvement in mass killings during World War II and opening Nazi collaborating unit of SS, Waffen SS. And so for me, it was truly just unbelievable when I first saw references to this division, and then as a Ukrainian division fighting against Russia, and not as Galician division, which was division of Waffen SS of Nazi Germany. And so for me, this was beyond belief, and I tweeted about this, that it was difficult to comprehend that something like this happened. But the reaction to this by the media in Canada and other countries, and reaction by Canadian politicians, I think is a very important sign, and appropriate sign in democratic country like Canada.
Can you give us a bit more context around this particular unit? As I understand, it was particularly cruel.
It was this division was created from Ukrainian volunteers in the Galicia region of western Ukraine in 1943, after the defeat of Nazi Germany in Stalingrad. And this division was a part of SS, Waffen SS, and there were similar divisions from other countries, from other volunteers from other countries, in addition to German SS units. And this division was basically defeated at the Battle of Brody by the Red Army, by the Soviet Army, but it still was involved in suppression of uprising in Slovakia and anti-partisan activity in Yugoslavia. But according to my research and research by scholars, other scholars, historians, Western historians, it can be said without any doubt that that members of this division were also involved in mass murder in Ukraine of Poles, of Jews, and Ukrainians, and in particular, one unit which became part of this division was responsible for the massacre of about 1,000 Polish civilians in Huta Peniacka village in Galicia, and another unit which, before it became a part of this division, was responsible for the mass execution of about 100 Jews and also Ukrainians and Poles in my high school building, in my high school in western Ukraine, near city of Lutsk. And the same unit also massacred several Polish villages, including women and children, and later it became part of SS Galicia division. So there is no doubt that this division members of this division were involved not only in Nazi collaboration, but also were involved in violations of human rights and atrocities, including mass murder during World War II.
So this must be personally painful for you as well, having been to that high school that they had gone to.
Yes, and this is another quite astonishing, because this event also took place during a speech by President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and that's why there's also connection to the current war in Ukraine. So for me, this was quite unbelievable to witness this and to see this, but I think there is a positive sign in this story because of the reaction by the many Canadians, by many people online, and now by the media and by politicians in Canada and other countries. I think this is a good sign in this regard, how to respond to such extraordinary event. But the question is this reaction enough as a response? Because this is a very serious issue, very significant, with significant implications for Canada and many countries, other countries like Ukraine and Poland.
I should mention as well that we're talking about this in the context of the Yom Kippur holiday, and very important, of course, for people of the Jewish faith. Now, yesterday, CBC spoke with Dan Paneton, who is with the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center, and he said that the standing ovation given by MPs is very concerning.
The Waffen-SS was the military wing of the unit tied to the German Nazi Party that was responsible for administering the Holocaust. The specific unit in question was responsible for the massacre of thousands of individuals and had units who were involved with the massacre of Jewish individuals during the Holocaust. So the fact that this individual, and by proxy the organization he was a member of, was given a standing ovation in the House of Commons is deeply troubling. The unit is complicit in the Holocaust. They collaborated with the Nazis and they participated in the massacre of civilians. These are in many ways crimes that have not fully been answered for in historical memory, and which, by honoring them in our House of Legislature, absolves the unit and the individuals absolved of their historical crimes.
And so we are asking you, what do you make of the reaction from the Speaker of the House? Do you think Anthony Rota should resign? What do you make of his apology? And what are the ramifications of this incident? This after there are calls from the NDP for the Speaker to resign after he invited a Ukrainian war veteran who, it turns out, fought in a Nazi unit during World War II. He has apologized, but the calls for him to resign are there, asking you if you think that should happen. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And by email, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. Scott is joining us now from Victoria. Hi there, Scott. Good afternoon. What do you think?
Hi, thanks for taking. He absolutely should resign, and I'll tell you why. On the world stage, he's made Canada look like a bunch of baboons. I mean, it's an embarrassment. What do you think they're thinking around the world? Like, Canada doesn't do any research? How hard would it be to do a little bit of vetting before you're going to, praise somebody? I mean, would I praise you without knowing you? No, I wouldn't. So this guy's a clown. Kick him out. It's the only way to save a little bit of face on the world stage. Get rid of him. Otherwise, it makes us look weak.
Scott, thank you very much for the call. That's Scott joining us from Victoria. And my guest is Professor Ivan Kachinovsky, a political science professor at the University of Ottawa. Now, what are the ramifications? As we're asking our callers, Professor, what does this mean? What impact is it going to have on the image of Canada on the world stage?
I think this is this state innovation to the veteran of SS, Waffen-SS Galician Division in the Canadian Parliament by Prime Minister of Canada and by President of Ukraine Zelensky and by members of the government would obviously have a negative impact on the image of Canada. And since Canada was a member of the Allies and played an important role in the defeat of Nazi Germany, and especially now because of the war between Russia and Ukraine, Russia would use this incident and this event to present basically the Western countries, including Canada, and the Ukrainian government, specifically Zelensky, as basically praising and supporting Nazi collaborators, because Russia claims that Ukraine is Nazi state. This is obviously a false statement, but they use this to justify invasion of Ukraine. But I think a reaction in Canada by Canadian politicians to this event and I think would help to deal with ramifications of this event.
Okay.
Because I think because of importance of this, I think for the image of Canada, I think this is helpful in this regard.
So what do you think should happen then? You touched earlier on the apology. Is that enough? What are the next steps that you think should be taken?
I think it's necessary to investigate what actually happened and how this veteran of SS Galician Division was allowed to be invited to this speech and to this event and would be given such standing ovation because apology by the Speaker of the House of Commons is important, but I'm not sure that this was just limited to his own decision, his own statements, which are also quite extraordinary because he called this veteran of SS Waffen-SS Division Ukrainian hero and Canadian hero and called for the Parliament to thank him for all his service. But I think it's important also to understand and to investigate if there was, if other, for instance, members of the government or staff or other politicians were involved in this decision, in this event, and recognition of this veteran of SS Galician Division by the Canadian Parliament. And what happened, because I think this is not just sufficient to accept this at face value and say this issue is resolved with such apology.
Does this tell you anything? People may have been surprised, are surprised that this happened, that this Ukrainian Canadian was invited and praised and honored in the House of Commons. But what do we have to learn about the presence of former soldiers who did fight in connection with with Nazi units who are here in Canada?
I think this is another issue because many of soldiers of SS Galicia Division after World War II and specifically during the Cold War, they moved to Canada after they surrendered to the Allies, to the United Kingdom. At the end of World War II, they were moved to United Kingdom, and many of them then moved to Canada. And I think this was a very big issue in Ukrainian community because they became permanent in the Ukrainian community, but also this became a very important issue in Ukrainian politics, because now there are debates and policies of the government in Ukraine to deal with these issues, historical issues, but this division is regarded as basically as Nazi collaborators in Ukraine by the Ukrainian government. It's not regarded as national heroes, and I think this is also important to underline that this issue is very important also for Canada, but also for Ukraine. And in terms of because many veterans of this division live not in Ukraine but in Canada, because many of them were persecuted in the Soviet Union and sent to Gulag. But in Canada, there was no no actual justice or no actual coming to terms with this division and legacy that it left and involvement in atrocities during World War II. So I think it's also important to discuss these issues and to raise this historical responsibility and connection to Canada in this regard, because this is quite extraordinary event.
So to you, this calls for an investigation into how this happened, how this took place. We hear from opposition Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre saying this is, pinning this on the Prime Minister, that he needs to address it. How far do you think this should go then?
Again, I think it's important to investigate actually what happened before taking any steps, because I think we have political statements and obviously opposition want to use this for their own advantage. And there was a statement just shortly before this program by Prime Minister of Canada, and he said that this was a very embarrassing situation, and he said that this was responsibility of the Speaker of the Parliament, and but he could not call him to resign. But I think this is crucial to determine actually what happened, and if this was just a decision by Speaker of the House of Commons, or maybe there were other involvement, and what kind of consequences this would take and would lead to is also very important, because Canada needs to show to the world and to Canadians, to people in Canada, that these issues, which are historical issues, but also very important contemporary issues, need to be taken seriously, and that this would never happen again because of very negative impact that it had, this event had on image of Canada again and on many Canadians. And I think it will still have a very significant impact in the future.
Let's take another call now. Palma is joining us from Richmond. Hi, Palma. Good afternoon. What do you think? Does the Speaker need to resign?
Yeah. You know what? I have a lot of different thoughts about this. First and foremost, it's a horrible embarrassment for Canada. And I feel very, very badly. And I feel very bad for that it happened. And I do think that in order to take full responsibility, the Speaker should resign, because to me, I would infer that somebody on his staff didn't do the proper vetting, but also maybe people in North Bay, like this gentleman. Sorry, I shouldn't even use the word because I'm disgusted. This person has maybe been living a secret life. I don't know. Nobody seemed to be aware. And so that's a terrible thing, and I do think the Speaker should take responsibility and resign. He was well-intentioned, thought he was doing a good thing, and it blew up, and it's a terrible thing. And I'm Jewish, and I lost family in the Holocaust, and I lost family in Ukraine to persecution because they were Jewish in Ukraine. So the hatred that people experienced and continue to experience in the world is tragic. And it's happening right here and right now. And all kinds of minorities are feeling that. And I agree with the guest, who I appreciate very much, sharing what clearly is very upsetting, talking about the opposition, using this to their advantage. They're divisive. They fraternize, and I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. I'm scared for Canada. There's a lot of right-wing, neo-Nazi elements right here, right now, and I'm very, very afraid that history is repeating itself. So that's what it brings home for me, and I think it's a terrible, terrible thing that happened, and we have to recognize it and make sure it doesn't happen again. But if people think that that was in the past and it's not happening now, to all kinds of peoples being led by a right-wing party and right-wing parties and fascists all over the world, it's here, it's now, and we have to stamp it out. And so that's what it brings home for me, both personally, and I'm very sad for Canada. And I'm sad because our country, our Prime Minister, is a tremendous ally of Ukraine. Ukraine is facing that every single day right now. And so to detract in any way from the efforts that we all have to put into helping them preserve democracy, and the fact that Putin today exactly jumped on this for propaganda purposes, I mean, that's the world that we live in. So we have to know what's the right thing to do, and we have to do it. For the Speaker, that means resigning. For the rest of us, it means being vigilant, to not let what happened in the past happen right now. Although it is happening, we have to stand up and speak up. And I'm sorry, Pierre Poilievre is divisive. He'll use anything to divide the country, and that's as wrong can be. We all have to get together on the same page here. We can have different views, but we can't be doing the things that are going on. Shame on Canada, shame on Pierre Poilievre.
Palma, thank you for the call. I will leave it at that. Thank you so much, and I'm sorry for what your family went through. Ivan Kachanovsky, she's talking there about what's present now, what people need to be concerned about, when it comes to, and she talked about fraternizing with far-right elements, when Pierre Poilievre supported what he called peaceful protests by truckers. He said he denounced promoting extremism. What are your thoughts on where Canada is right now politically?
I think this also issue, as I mentioned, this issue is not very important because of historical connections to World War II and the Holocaust and other human rights violations, because in Ukraine there were 6 million people killed during World War II, including more than 1.5 million of Jews, and this is, I think, very significant implications in Poland as well, but in Canada, in terms of politics, and this is also significant. But there is also a resurgence of far right in many countries, including in Europe, and variety of organizations, and opening neo-Nazi organizations, and the same also kind of the same issue is also important in Ukraine because of such organizations also exist in Ukraine, and Russia exploits such organizations like Azov and so on, specifically to justify its invasion. And I think for Canada, it's also very important to consider these issues because of far-right organizations and far-right groups. But compared to many other countries, as I can say, far-right is not yet as influential in Canada as in many other countries in Europe or in Ukraine. And so I think this is also important to underline. But in terms of politics, internal politics and far-right, I think there are important issues to consider in Canada as well.
Professor Kachanovsky, thank you very much for bringing us some context on this today.
Thank you.
Ivan Kachanovsky is a political science professor at the University of Ottawa who specializes in major conflicts in Ukraine and has published a paper on this particular division of the SS in Ukraine. And my thanks to our callers. And Palma, thank you. And I acknowledge how painful that was for you to share that history from your family. Thank you very much for calling. 12:35, 1:35 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today here on CBC. We're on Radio 1, live streaming as well on CBC Gem and on YouTube. CBC Vancouver is where you can find us. You can find us online too, cbc.ca/BC. That's our main website here in British Columbia. And I'm Michelle Eliot. Very good to be with you this afternoon. Coming up in our next half hour, we will talk about treatment and management of diabetes symptoms with an expert, one of the renowned experts in BC. We'll also talk about a bylaw in Langley Township that currently bans tattoo parlors, and that could change as of tonight. We'll hear more about that coming up after the CBC News Update with Belle Puri.
Good afternoon. New data from the Provincial Coroner Service confirms more than 1,600 British Columbians have died as the result of toxic, unregulated drugs in the first 8 months of this year. In August, there were 174 deaths, the lowest number since June of last year. Unregulated drug toxicity is the leading cause of death in BC for people aged 10 to 59. Summerland RCMP are looking for a man who tried to lure a child into his red truck last week. The 10-year-old girl says she was approached while walking to school and was asked if she wanted a ride. The girl ran in the opposite direction. Investigators want to hear from anyone with information about the incident or anyone who has experienced something similar recently in Summerland. And Premier David Eby is in Ottawa for 2 days to meet with the Prime Minister and other federal officials. Eby hopes to discuss the need for more housing, as well as BC's clean energy opportunities and infrastructure needs. Also on the agenda, national support for emergency responses to disasters such as wildfires and flooding. A quick look at the BC weather along the north coast. A good chance of showers this afternoon and some thunder. In the Peace region, it will be an overcast afternoon. For the central interior, cloudy and a high of 18 degrees. In the Kootenays, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon. For the southern interior, the showers should be wrapping up right about now, and you'll have a high of 19 degrees throughout the afternoon. Along the south coast, periods of rain, maybe some thunder this afternoon as well, a high of 16 degrees. Now back to Michelle Eliot and more of BC Today.
The umbrellas are coming out.
Absolutely. I was like, first I had to find mine.
Yes, exactly. Thankfully, someone in my house actually surprised me by putting the umbrella very kindly next to my bag because I often forget.
and I know, and you have to think of everything. There's the umbrella, maybe a jacket, and no longer open-toed shoes.
No, that's true. Yes, we'll talk about that another time, but thank you very much. Sometimes we're thankful for that. Thank you, Belle. That's Belle Puri in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. You'll be thankful for me wearing closed-toe shoes anyway. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us. In a few moments, we'll talk about diabetes care and management and a new monitoring system that is now covered by BC PharmaCare. And we'll ask you as well what difference that would make for you. First, though, we have an interview here on a story that may have you scratching your head a little bit. Tonight in Langley Township, a decades-old ban on tattoo parlors could be removed. Yes, you heard that right. Tattoo parlors are not allowed in the township of Langley, and that's due to a bylaw from 1987. Now, that could change with a final vote tonight at council. And joining me is Langley Township Councillor Barb Martins. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. We're on pins and needles to find out what happens tonight. But why is this ban in place in the first place?
Right. So as I can gather, it's just one of those ones that they haven't touched. It's a, the language parlor, I think, suggests the era that this bylaw came in. Back when tattoo parlors were associated with nefarious activity in pool halls, where bikers and crime. And as we know, in this day and age, that is not the case. Probably more adults have tattoos than don't.
Yeah.
But it's just been a bylaw that's never been brought into the current century.
Yes. And, it's really deemed as an art now, isn't it?
Exactly.
Tattoo artists and having a tattoo on yourself to show there's often a story behind it as well. And so what happened to actually pay attention to this bylaw and now this possibility that it will be removed or reversed?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So it's interesting. I'm a first-term counselor, and the part of the job that I'm really enjoying is that people in our community reach out. They've got questions, concerns, issues, and I've got a set of tools to work with to see how I can help them out. In this particular case, a woman reached out to me who is she is trained in aesthetics, specifically in microblading, and she wanted to open a business in the township. And microblading, according to our bylaw and definitions, actually falls under tattooing, and it technically is not permitted anywhere in the township. And in her unique situation, why I really felt I needed to push this one forward, she wanted to give up a portion of her business, complimentary, back to charity, to in particular cancer survivors and patients who, due to chemotherapy, lose their hair. And so by providing free microblading, just allowing them to look, when they get up in the morning, to look in the mirror and feel pseudo-normal during a very difficult time in their lives. And that really hit me. It hit me actually very close to home. I am well aware of the impacts of cancer treatment. And to me, that was a reason to bring this into the light and let's do better. And practically speaking, again, we go back to in this century, this is a very common thing. This isn't what it was, but it's time to get this bylaw correct, move on. And I want her to be able to shine and provide that service to our community.
And so what are your expectations for tonight then?
Well, you never know till these things happen. But based on the conversations I've had with my colleagues, mayor and council, I think this should likely go through. I think everybody recognizes it's high time. So I'm waiting, but I'm cautiously optimistic that it will go through. Tonight's meeting is first, second, third, and final reading. So this will be the decision maker.
We will find out tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining us, Councillor. Really good to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Take care.
You too. That is Langley Township Councillor Barb Martins. You can let us know, too, about your own tattoo and let us know the story behind it. Send us a photo if you like as well. bctoday@cbc.ca. We'll update you on that vote tomorrow and show your photos and read some of your stories as well. It's 12:42, 1:42 in the Mountain Time Zone. Well, 31% of British Columbians live with diabetes or pre-diabetes, and 11% live with diagnosed diabetes. That is according to Diabetes Canada. Now, over recent years, there have been some game-changing drugs and devices for patients. You've heard, of course, about the drug Ozempic that's now become so popular as a drug for weight loss that the province has had to put in rules to protect its supply for British Columbians. Well, now patients in BC can access new sensor-based glucose monitoring technology. It is now covered by BC PharmaCare. So we're asking you, with that, what difference will it make, or other new breakthroughs make for you? And what is your own approach to diabetes management? It is very personal and individual. So what works for you? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, you can reach us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me is Dr. Akshay Jain, a clinical and research endocrinologist and diabetes advocate. He's my guest. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Dr. Jain, thank you for joining us. First, can you give us a better sense of just how widespread diabetes is among British Columbians?
Oh yeah, it's actually, the rates are growing up so high. As you mentioned, there is over 11% of British Columbians with diagnosed diabetes. If we add in undiagnosed diabetes as well as pre-diabetes or borderline diabetes, that number shoots up to 31%. So basically, as of now, 31% British Columbians are having sugars that are not in the normal range.
And why is that number growing?
So there's multiple factors. As the human race becomes more and more sedentary as our stress levels start going up, as our sleep starts deteriorating. We are at increased risk of developing diabetes. Clearly, our foods are not as healthy as they used to be. We are eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of carb-heavy and calorie-heavy diet. And at the same time, also, particularly in our community over here in British Columbia, we are seeing that there are certain populations that are at an increased risk. So if you look at the overall population, certain segments, South Asians and First Nations, they are at a higher risk of developing diabetes just because of the genetic structure.
Okay, so predisposition as well as our increasingly sedentary lifestyle. And so, we tell us about this this monitoring device first of all. How significant is this development?
Yeah, continuous glucose monitoring technology came out a few years ago and has been a game changer, in my opinion. I've been practicing diabetes care for over 11 years now. Diabetes is one of those conditions which we call a silent killer. So people living with diabetes may have blood sugars that are not in the normal range and may never even know about it. So it is very asymptomatic for the most part. Some people may experience symptoms if their blood sugars are very low or very high, but otherwise they could just be sitting, working, and not knowing that their sugars are elevated. In order to know what the blood sugars are, previously the technology involved pricking our fingers, so doing a finger stick as we call it, and that's obviously very cumbersome, very painful.
Right.
Even then, we would only know what the sugar is at that particular second. So we didn't know if that sugar is on its way up or down or what's going to happen. This is where continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, entered the picture. And these glucose monitoring devices, or sensors as they are commonly called, not only will they give the sugar reading at that particular second, but the individual wearing the device also knows if the sugar is on its way up or down. If there is a low sugar, even if it's in the middle of the night, the sensors, these new sensors especially, will start beeping and alerting the individual so that they can wake up and correct it. We've all heard of instances where, say, somebody's driving on the road, on the highway, and if they are having diabetes, God forbid, if the sugar was to drop low, they could lose control of their vehicle and get into an accident, injuring themselves and others. With these new sensors, there'll be an alert that will go off, hopefully allowing that individual to pull over and correct low sugars before things can go wrong. So CGM has really changed the way we've been managing diabetes.
And how hard was it to access before this announcement that it would be covered by PharmaCare?
It was extremely difficult. So PharmaCare has been taking steps. They initially covered one type of CGM device, but it's obviously different strokes, different blows. We need to make sure that people have access to all different types of devices or medications which could be beneficial for them. So most recently, BC PharmaCare approved of the Abbott FreeStyle Libre 2. This is a sensor that will stay on the body for up to 14 days, alerting the individual of what their sugar readings are. So this has significantly improved access, particularly in people who are at highest risk. For instance, those who are using insulin, multiple injections in a day, they get a better sense of what their sugar readings are throughout the day and night.
Okay. Dr. Akshay Jain is my guest, a clinical and research endocrinologist and diabetes expert. Appreciate your expertise and the specifics that you're giving right now, because this is such a widespread concern among British Columbians. And so we're asking you, given that PharmaCare in BC is now covering this sensor-based glucose monitoring system, will that make a difference for you? And what is your own approach to diabetes management? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 as well. And Sheila is joining us from Kelowna. Sheila, you live with type 1 diabetes.
Well, type 1.5, actually. So sometimes my pancreas is working and sometimes it isn't, but it's essentially declining.
Okay. And let us know what that has been like for you. And we'll ask Dr. Jain as well to tell us more about type 1.5 diabetes and what the specifics of that are. But what has your condition meant for you?
Yeah, I was diagnosed about 12 years ago with late adult onset diabetes. And at that time, we knew it was a 1.5, where my pancreas was still functioning but declining. And really, because of that kind of limbo space that I am with the pancreas still working, I've been in kind of a hellscape of management of, because sometimes the pancreas spits up the insulin and I'm doing it at the same time, managing this. And so I end up with severe lows. There's also the complication now. I'm 46 years old and I'm moving into that wonderful female stage of life of menopause. And so the hormone also impact my ability to control my sugars. And I'm just so grateful that you're having this topic, because the glucose, the continuous glucose meters is something that I was just recently able to get into. While they've been in the market and available to us diabetics, it's just recently, at least with Dexcom, the G6 that I'm using, where it can be in water and be submerged. I'm a 6-day-a-week swimmer.
Oh, wow.
and trying to manage this. And then and we've tried like every kind of different diabetes medication to try to find some kind of stabilization with the sugars. And again, today your topic's timely, because I'm this afternoon going to meet with my GP to look at how Ozempic could be hopefully a tool we can add to getting my sugar stable. We're finding that we're really struggling just because of the hormone imbalance, despite adhering to movement and food. There's still that challenge going on. So the CGM and hopefully Ozempic will be hopefully the final leg of my journey of getting control.
I hope so too, Sheila. Here you are being so diligent, pursuing these treatments, going swimming most of the week. And so you mentioned that the monitoring system is making a difference for you. You're now looking at Ozempic, and you're hopeful that will make a change for you.
Yes. Yeah. The monitoring has been phenomenal. I've been able to be with the Dexcom G6 for almost a year now, and we are actually starting to see the trends. And with my diabetes nurse and nutritionist, we're able to actually mark when we can see when my period is coming in, my menstrual cycle is coming in and going out, and seeing how the medications, the food, the activity are all working together or not working together. So it's been phenomenal to have that technology, just like the doctor was saying there about, for example, when driving with the finger prick, I can't pull over and stop and do a finger prick in a timely way, but with the CGM, I set it with alert. It lets me know if I'm going down, and exactly as the doctor said, I can pull over, treat it, and have that kind of safety of mind.
And Sheila, because you were in that kind of limbo for a while, is there anything you want to share that might have improved that for you? When it comes to support or knowledge about type 1.5 diabetes specifically, or just the ability to perhaps access more options? What would have made a difference for you in the early stages?
I think we have problem with access to endocrinologists here in the interior. They're all pooled down on the coast. So that's been a big challenge of care. I am fortunate, though, here in Kelowna through Interior Health Diabetes Education Clinic. There is a phenomenal diabetes nurse who's made amazing relationships across BC around care. And what I would say to others who are struggling and finding stabilization, be persistent. Knock on the door of your local diabetes education center and don't give them a break. Just show up. I
can see Dr. Jane is not opposed to that. He's nodding his head. Sheila, all the best to you. Just so great to hear from you, and that you have this hope and optimism now in your journey. I really hope that it makes a difference for you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. Have a lovely day. Thank you for this conversation.
You too. Good luck with your meeting with your GP this afternoon. Dr. Jane, so much there, right? What it was like for her. First, perhaps let's go through what type 1.5 diabetes is.
Yeah, so type 1.5 diabetes is essentially when at a later stage in life, your pancreatic function starts declining. So the pancreas is the part of the body that produces insulin, which is a very vital hormone that regulates blood sugars. Type 1 diabetes is essentially when the body starts attacking the pancreas, and that is generally seen more in kids, but it can happen at any stage of life. And what Sheila was mentioning is up until age 34, life was very different for her. And then 12 years ago, She got diagnosed with this condition, and since then it's been a roller coaster for Sheila. That's such a poignant story that she shared. Everything that she does, she has to take into account what her sugars would be. Even a basic thing like swimming, she has to think so much before she goes for a swim, whether her sugar's too high, too low. So having something that is keeping a watch on her sugars, such as the CGM, can be such a game changer for her. I strongly believe that since the CGMs came out, they've been less of a glucose monitoring tool and more of a behavioral modification tool, Michelle. Yeah, time and again, I hear from individuals where, they'll have something, a meal, for instance, that they've always had for lunch, say, and then they see how their blood sugar skyrocket.
Right.
Like, oh, that's their aha moment, Michelle. Like, they're like, I thought this was a healthy meal for me, but now my body shows that how my sugars are going up. So it then makes them change their diet. They can see how different activities can help control their sugars, how taking medications on time can also help that. So it really helps with behavioral modification as well.
And so finally, she talked there about the challenges early on, challenge with accessing endocrinologists in the Kootenays, or in the interior rather. And so what advice would you have, just in our last minute and a half here, what advice would you have for someone who is just starting their journey?
It's been a big challenge for sure. I'm not going to lie. As with most healthcare in our province, there's been a difficult time with access. But COVID in its wake, for better or for worse, silver lining was that we all got accustomed to virtual care. And certainly the government has supported doctors doing virtual care. So in my own clinic, I'm sitting here in Surrey, British Columbia. Just this morning, I was speaking to a patient in Prince George. And later this afternoon, I've got another phone appointment, which I'm having with the patients in Kamloops. So it does, enlarge my prospects of being able to, reach out to patients that are not physically in the vicinity.
Dr. Jane, thank you very much for discussing this with us. New treatments for diabetes and advice for management and care. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Dr. Akshay Jain is a clinical and research endocrinologist and diabetes expert. Really grateful for him joining us. I know he's a very busy person, as you can see. So good to have him on the show today. And again, our top story for today, you'll be able to see it on CBC News, on our website, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC television shows as well. Canada's New Democrats calling on the House of Commons Speaker Anthony Rota to resign after he did apologize for inviting a Ukrainian war veteran who, it turns out, fought in a Nazi-aligned unit to Ottawa and the House of Parliament for a speech during the Ukrainian president's visit and address. Much more coverage of that throughout the day here on CBC, so do watch out for that. That is it for our show today. My thanks to everyone who called in and joined the discussion. Always very good to hear from you. You can email us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. You can listen again, CBC Listen app, and watch us on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. I'm Michelle Eliot. Very grateful for you joining us. Have a good afternoon.